people would ask you, so how many do you have to pray? 100? Oh boy, you did it. You really did it this time. 200? Oh boy, what did you do? You know what I mean? Like that.
Hello and welcome. I'm Dennis Semsey.
And I'm Sam Hornberger.
On this episode, we sat down and talked to a Catholic who was born and raised in Ecuador. You are listening to the No Faith in Humanity podcast, the podcast about...
You can be bad during the week, but then on Sunday you can, confess, and then you're forgiven, right?
Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode. This week is going to be a little bit different from the previous weeks. First of all, Sam isn't here. He had some things that came up, so he's dealing with that right now. So you're kind of stuck with me, Dennis, for this episode anyway, so sorry about that. Second of all, because Sam isn't on this episode, we're not going to have a further discussion. Instead, it's just going to be the entire interview. On this episode, I sat down and talked to my good friend Sergio. He has a bit of a unique outlook on everything, mostly because he was born and raised in Ecuador. Always had incredible conversations about social issues, about politics, about just science, just everything. So I wanted to sit down and talk to him about faith, because I didn't really know where he stood, but I knew that he had kind of a unique upbringing. So I thought it would be a good idea to sit down and talk with him, and I was definitely not disappointed. I was definitely right, so pat myself on the back for that. This episode, on top of the two previous reasons why it's going to be a little bit different, it's also going to be different because we talk about his faith a lot, but we also talk about politics in Ecuador, and I talked with him a little bit about politics in America and how religion kind of influences both of those, and it's a really fascinating discussion. So, without any further ado, please enjoy. Yeah, so I don't know. I wanted to talk to you because I feel like we always have like good conversations about politics and everything, and social stuff and whatnot. And I don't know. We never really dove too deep, I feel like, in religion or spirituality. And I don't know. You have like a pretty unique story. I know that you came over here to the United States. When did you come to the United States again?
2001.
2001. Okay, so you've been here.
It's gonna be 16 years now.
So yeah, you grew up in Ecuador. And I don't know. Obviously, I'm pretty naive about what religion. I'm guessing that it's mostly Catholicism in.
Yeah.
And so you grew up Catholic then.
Yes.
Would you say that was in America? I feel like even with politics, it's very steeped in religion, especially in like this past election cycle. I mean, it seemed like, the evangelical Christians really pushed for Trump to get into the White House. And that's typical with like, they always push for the Republican to get in. But it seems to be that like religion and politics are like the lines are very blurred here. I'm guessing it's probably different in Ecuador, because I know that you guys are more socialist than we are here. So I don't know if there's more of a separation or if it's all intertwined.
Well, let me tell you this. I do, how do you say, feel that there was a separation of church and state, but the society is very conservative in any ways, right? Like social conservative in that way, like, sex is taboo at least when I was growing up. I don't know how kids are now, but when I was growing up, it was very, that's it's kind of like very, everybody's conservative in that way, socially, but not, like you said, not economically. Like there's always been, social security, the unions, education free, at least in elementary, and then and yes, there was a lot of influence from the left in all Latin America. So yes, there's always but religion, like say there are a lot of Catholic schools, right? Uh, so I went to a Catholic school like for all my elementary school and my high school. Uh, a lot of the friends that I met through my life, they all are from Catholic schools. Girls that I met, like my first girlfriend was from a Catholic school that was only girls. My school was only boys. You understand what I mean? Like it's that conservative that in a Catholic school it has to be only boys. In a Catholic school it only has to be only girls. You cannot have the mix. There are no mixed Catholic schools, at least when I was growing up.
Yeah, and you were, but your family was a little bit more well off that you could afford to go to these private schools, or was this like pretty typical?
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're middle class because both of my parents were the first ones to go to college, of their family. So both had degrees, so they could, they both have jobs, and we were, yes, we moved to a nicer place, when I was growing up, because my father grew up in what you could say in the city, right, in the inner city where it's just streets, no parks. But then when I was growing up, he moved us out to like a suburb, right? Like a suburb of the city, and there were parks. I didn't have to worry about cars. I didn't have to play in the streets like everybody else. I could, there were parks and places to play. So yeah, they could, yeah. So Catholic school is, a lot of people go to Catholic school in Ecuador. At least when I was growing up. Yeah.
Mm. Obviously that's from like European influence on.
From Spanish, yeah, the Spanish.
Yeah, so it's mostly okay. So yeah, I figured that it was mostly Catholic and that you grew up Catholic and everything. But would you say that it's more of a cultural thing more than like a.
You know what? I was thinking today about this and how to explain it to you. I could equate. The only thing that I could think of is like, like Israel. Like everybody there is Jew. I mean, either you're Jewish or like it's like that's the thing to be there. I don't know, like, what's the percentage of Jewish people in Israel? Like it should be high, right? Or,
Yeah, of
or
course, yeah.
that's my understanding. So. It's like that's the thing to be. That's all. That's all you know. That you don't like anybody from other religion. It's like you don't know them that well, or you don't really. I don't think that you marginalize, but you don't get in contact with people from other religions. Really, it's not like a thought. You know what I mean? I guess that's what.
So it's a taboo thing to be looking into other if you were someone there and you were like, if you were still living there, or at least at the time that you were living, was you moved out? How old were you when you left?
Was what 22?
Okay, so
20.
22. So if you were, yeah, if you're a 22-year-old guy and you were like, hey, I'm interested in like pursuing these other religions. First of all, it'd probably be very difficult to like even find people to talk to in that culture. But like you would kind of be like looked down upon, or like kind of people would be like weirded out by you pursuing those things.
Yeah, it's kind of like that, but because say one of my uncles, I remember I was already here, yeah, I was outside. I came back and he had become a Mormon,
Oh wow.
and that was the talk always about like, oh, he and his family became Mormons, and I mean, people teased him. I mean, people. I'm talking my family. The family will tease him, but I don't know. But that was his choice, and but I think now he's not a Mormon anymore. But it was that was the thing. I have a good friend from high school that we grew up together, and now he became Jewish, and that's the thing. Like now it's a little bit of a thing with him. Sometimes we get into not argument, no, but like I don't really try to talk politics or about Israel or stuff with him because I don't want to get into that conversation with him because he's my friend and I don't know I really haven't asked him his point of view about Israel and the Palestinians and stuff like that. So I don't want to get into that with him. But now he's Jewish, and it's kind of like, and I see him on Facebook. He always is talking about things that happen to his kids in Ecuador because he's Jewish, because they're Jewish. They have become Jewish. So like he has his kids in a school that is supposed to be how do you call non-religious? How do you call what's the word that people use when there's a it should be non-religious?
Was a secular school?
Secular. It should be a secular school, but they have been like like he had arguments with teachers that like he that they there are certain religious festivities that they want his kids to participate that they shouldn't because it's supposed to be a secular school, and I can see that in his Facebook. And yeah, I'm with him on that, like it shouldn't, if it is the school is advertised secular, they shouldn't be imposing Catholicism or on his kids, because I'm with him on that, but there are other things that he puts, and then I don't want to comment on other things that he puts, but yeah, that's like odd for me. Growing up, there's this thing like it's always said like Catholics are like this thing with being Catholic, like you can always you can be bad during the week, but then on Sunday you can confess, and then you're forgiven, right? So a lot of people, like with the drinking on the weekends, and then Sunday you wake up and you have to go to church or stuff like that. Uh, there were some religions that were popping up that were supposed to be like evangelical or something, that people are not drinking, they don't drink at all, and people, people will make fun of people that will become this really, I don't even know which religion it is, but I just they wouldn't drink. So you say something, hey, call John, and he said no, John can come because he's now this religion and he doesn't drink anymore. So the word that I want to say, or that they use in Spanish, is evangelical, or that's the word that we use. I don't know what it translates to, like what religion is, but I don't know, right? But it's that or people that were hard drinkers or something. They have become that religion. Now they don't drink anymore, and that's like the thing always. It's like a I don't know. I don't know how to explain, but that's yeah, that's the thing.
You obviously know Alan still works with me, doesn't work with you anymore. But he he's an atheist, and he's funny because he always jokes around about how someone who's religious, they can do all these bad things, and then they can just ask for forgiveness on Sunday or something, and he always makes that joke. And it's kind of what you were saying, that you're saying people will live one life and then on Sunday will go in and be forgiven about it. How I grew up, very different, or different from you. I mean, I grew up very religious. I grew up Lutheran, not Catholic. But in my mind, it was always like church and like Christianity was supposed to change you, so you never, so you weren't supposed to do these bad things anymore. It wasn't like Christianity was there as like a like insurance or anything. It was like it was supposed to change you. So I don't know, when I hear something like what you're talking about that was going on in Ecuador, it really does sound like it's a kind of used as a cultural thing, just kind of like, hey, we just use this kind of as a crutch or something, which I'm not saying is like
I think like that's why I made the analogy to being Jewish, because it is that's how people are in Ecuador. Like they have Catholicism, it's everywhere, and it is like that, like a crutch. Like yes, you could do these things, and then Sunday you go to church and you confess, and then you're forgiven, and well, you do communion and everything, and then you start a new week. You try your best. You try your best not to sin again, but you will, and you have a safety net after. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's so fascinating to me. I don't know. It almost seems like I mean it's Christianity. It's all in the same vein, but it just seems so much more foreign to me, and I don't understand. Maybe because I didn't grow up in it, and it just seems so different. I guess it's because like maybe it's more tied to like I feel like logistics and bureaucracy a little bit more in my mind, where it's like, you do these things. Did you have to like go to confession? Did you have to like pray the rosary and like light all the candles and do all that?
Yeah, when you went to confession, and the priest will give you a penitence, whatever it was, you would do it. Whatever he would tell you that you had to do, then you would do it. That's it.
Really?
And then you
Do you
forgive.
remember some of
Yep.
your some of the things that you had to do?
Mostly praying, or mostly, if I would lie, then you have to go back to your parents and tell the truth, and yeah, they will tell you pray 100 Our Fathers, and that would be like the thing. So you have to pray them. Yeah.
Really? Is that something you would have to do? Is pray 100 Our Fathers?
Yes, yes.
It re-
Things like that. That would be good.
it reminds. Have you? I mean, you've seen The Simpsons, right? Where like, when the in the opening scene or whatever, the opening sequence, it always has Bart like writing on the board or something.
Yeah, that like
Yeah,
that.
that's how I
Yes,
kind of
yes,
feel. Like it's thrown into like detention or something. I don't know.
yes.
To me, it's but to me, it just seems so bizarre to me that like if you could do something wrong, you would have to say the certain prayer like a certain amount of times, and suddenly all is forgiven. It doesn't seem like it's like, because in my mind when I was growing up, everything was about changing the heart. Like, oh man, you got, when I say heart, obviously I mean like your morale, or like
Yeah.
if you have like you should have like shame or guilt about the things that you've done, so then you kind of change from within. And whereas like I feel like if it's like, oh, you can just like read something and say these prayers and then suddenly for forgiveness.
Hold on, hold on. Okay, okay, I get you. I get you. I understand your point of view, but the thing is, it's not easy to tell to a completely stranger the sins that you have done, man. It's not like especially when you're growing up, being a teenager and stuff that you do, or even if you're a young adult, like in your 20s, like can you go to confess? Can you easily go to confession and say, to a complete stranger, this is what I did? I mean, that's what you see in the movies. Like that's a big part of a movie when people go to a confession and they say what they have done, right? And then the act of doing this is a penitence. So it's people would ask you, so how many do you have to pray? 100? Oh boy, you really did it this time. 200? Oh boy, what did you do? You know what I mean? Like that. So it is something that you will shame you, right? First you have to come up with the courage to go and say the bad things that you have done, and then you're shamed after, your peers, or or even people that know you, your parents say, "How long have you been praying?" Like, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? That's the thing. So, yeah, it is a crutch for the society as a whole. Like being that you can confess and everything, but also it is a thing that you have to come up with as the boss to do
Oh
it.
wow, yeah, that is a, yeah. That's really interesting. Because they definitely like romanticize it on like in Hollywood and everything. But you're right, it is really difficult. It would be extremely difficult. I mean, even like I was seeing a therapist for a while, and even like someone who I am paying to listen to me tell him stuff, it's still like an uncomfortable thing. And then it's like you're telling this person who you are seeing in church, like they know who you are. It's not, even though, I mean, you didn't do it right to their face, right? Wasn't there something in between, like they couldn't see your face or whatever they're supposed to be? But they know who you are, so they kind of know what you've done now. It is actually very difficult. And to get something off your chest and telling someone is
And
important.
think about it, that if you're in a therapist, they're not supposed to judge you, even though they might judge you like internally, but they are not supposed to judge you and be encouraging and stuff like that. Like the priest would judge you and would say, "Why would you do this?" And why, that's of course because that's what they do. Like they trying to. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they're trying, but they are supposed to put fear in your heart. That's what they're supposed to do.
Put the fear of God in your heart.
That's my understanding of it. Like that's what I felt when I was, whenever I did it, and then
How often did you do it?
no, I didn't do it that much. I remember. I don't know. It's not I didn't. I would say in my teenage years there are a couple of occasions that I did it, but then I didn't feel comfortable with that. I think I'm in the same. I've been hearing your podcast, and I've heard how you are like, kind of looking for a religion, or kind of like this. I kind of been like an, how do you say, an off Catholic. I don't go to church anymore. I
Mm,
haven't gone to
mm.
church for a while.
Okay.
You kind of
Yeah, I was gonna ask where you stood because I don't think I ever actually asked you where you kind of stand in your spiritual beliefs even right now. I know where you stand politically, but I don't know where you stand exactly religiously. But okay, so you're saying you're kind of you've obviously walked away or dropped out of the Catholic faith. When did that happen? That was kind of like
I think right after I finished high school, like I said, I was in a Catholic school, so I had to go to church every Sunday. We had a theology subject, in schools that you would have to talk about, what did the priest talk on Sunday? What was the class for most of the time was taught by a priest, but then it was taught by a other by a teacher that was, I don't know if she wanted to be a nun or she was very religious woman. And I think I told you this, like you know, I actually I think she put kind of that seed of you know, kind of Catholic. I mean, I know she was. I think she was Catholic. I'm sure she was. I'm not 100%, but you could see that she had kind of like she didn't like us, because we had, the people that were in the school, they were supposed to have a little bit more money, to go to the school. It wasn't like, you had to be, you had to have certain amount of money to pay every month or whatever the tuition. And she saw us as kind of what's the word,
spoiled or like
spoiled. She saw us as spoiled brats. I could feel that in whenever she spoke to us, and it was like, oh man, that kind of gets into you. And then I don't know how it's here in high school, but kind of when I was in high school, we studied world history, and you get to listen about socialism, communism, uh, and then you put all these things together. And then I was also listening to heavy metal at those years, and that kind of like gets to you into this mindset that kind of the Catholic Church is the man and you're against the man. You know what I mean? Like that rebellious part. And so I think right after high school, I stopped going to church. I mean, I do pray. I pray in the mornings. I like every morning before I leave my house, I pray. But it's just something I do.
do you okay, so yeah, you say you don't go to church. I know that you have a son. He's how old? 5 years old? 6 years?
Six.
6 years old? Okay. Do you not make him to go to church, but do you take him to church?
No, I don't make him go to church. But you know what? He was baptized Lutheran because my wife is Lutheran, and my head was like always the kid is like the mother's religion. And so my wife and I we got married in a non-denominational ceremony. We went to Vegas to get married, so it was like
Wait, you really went to Vegas to get married? Like
yeah.
one of those like drive-through wedding
No,
places? Oh,
no,
okay.
we planned it. We planned it. We
Okay.
wanted to go there because her family is from Finland, my family is from Ecuador. Like get everybody here. It's just not logistically didn't was not gonna work. So my boy, he was baptized in Finland in the Lutheran church. So he's Lutheran, but my wife doesn't go to church either. So she's like a off Lutheran too.
Okay, okay, you guys are both. Yeah, no, no, no. I understand. Do you think that there was any time in your life, where you like firmly believed in God and the Catholic Church? Maybe like, I don't know. Maybe as a either as a young boy or in your teenage years or anything. Was there any moment that you feel like you?
I mean, I do. Don't get me wrong. I do believe in Jesus and the Virgin Mary, and that's who I pray to, and that's the you know. But looking back, I think, say, how do you call it here? Probably like the later years of middle school and how do you call it? Like maybe the early years of high school. How do you call it? Junior high or what's it called here? I don't know.
Well, so the middle school, at least for me, was fifth through eighth grade, and then high school was like ninth through 10th. So it was like so
Yeah,
when you're
I said those in fifth to eighth grade. I would have been more of a like a believer. Oh, like going to church for and. thinking more about it, and I did join like youth groups when I was of course kind of like the youth groups. I also wanted to meet girls and things like that, but it wasn't like that. It wasn't the only reason. I had a lot of friends that went, so I went with them, and I have friends that play Christian music, so I used to go to their concerts. There was a priest that was cool, so you could talk to him and stuff, and
But you still pray to Jesus and the Virgin. You said you still pray to Jesus and you still believe.
yeah, that's the Catholic part of being religious for me, I think.
Yeah, pray. Yeah, it's just interesting to me because you kind of have. Because I kind of feel like I'm very similar to you, where I've kind of stripped away everything to do with Christianity and the church, but yet I still believe. I don't know if I believe in God, but I still pray to God, and I feel like maybe I pray in the only way that I know how, and that is like through Jesus. Like that's the only thing that I know. I don't know. It's just interesting to me that you would be brought up, kind of decide like, no, this isn't really for me, but then still, and I'm the same way, and I don't necessarily know why I do that. It could have been just culture, just being brought up.
And I tell you one thing, like we have talked, and you have said your parents are very religious and stuff. But my parents, my mom is a little bit more religious, but she doesn't go to church every Sunday. She doesn't have that, like of course she will pray. Like if somebody is sick, she will pray for them for she's not thinking that that only prayer will heal. It's not that, but she just thinks that helps. It's like a little extra that you could do. You put the medicines first and then you pray. You know what I mean? That's her thing, and she would be like she was the one who like wanted me to go to that Catholic school because my mother went to a Catholic school when she was kid, and my father went to a public school. And he's kind of like the more leftist leaning in the house, and he would have probably wanted me to go to a public school. And my father has a little bit of a he doesn't he was probably like in uh, how do you say, well, he was in university. I think he was like an organizer and stuff like that. I have never talked to him fully about that, but I get that because all of his friends are very politically inclined, and they are with the left. So he never got into the politics, but I could hear when he talks about it. So that's my I never really had a very big conversation about it, but his comments about the church are always very
Very critical.
singing. They're always singing, yeah.
So obviously, just a little bit of politics in Ecuador. You guys, obviously, you have elections. Even though I think you said at one point that I may be wrong about this, or maybe I misheard you, but I thought at one point you said that they obviously do have elections, but it's kind of controlled by the like.
It's just one. Yeah, it's a national entity that controls the election.
Yeah, yeah. So do you feel like there's probably a lot of corruption then?
It might be right now. There were elections like 2 weeks ago. Actually, we have like two rounds, just like in France. You have heard of France that they have a first round and then a second round.
Yeah, I mean that's what's happening in Georgia too. The Georgia Six. Well, they don't have that too, but it turned out to like.
Yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, also in Georgia. Like, you have first, like everybody goes in, and then the two top they go for the next. Of course, if in the first round the first person wins by 50 plus, just like here, then that's the president. But it didn't happen. So now they went to the runoff, and everybody's saying that there's some kind of corruption and stuff like that because the party, the president's the previous president party is the guy that won. So you know, so the incumbent party, yeah, the incumbent party is the one that won. So everybody's complaining about that. So yeah, I think he's.
And there's like conservative parties and like more left parties, right? And I'm guessing it's like maybe conservative or even left wing would be defined a little bit differently in Ecuador than it is here, and kind of represented a little bit differently.
No, I think it's just, but that's the thing. Like liberalism, in a way, it's more of in my head. I think it's more about like being pro business and being more again, you know what I mean. Like the conservative will be like a more pro business type of party, but when it comes to social issues, everybody is conservative. Even the right, even the left wing, they're more probably more conservative socially. Yeah, like talking about abortion or talking about gay rights and stuff like that. Everybody will be more on the conservative side.
Really, across the
Yeah.
board. Okay.
Yeah, I think so. I think in my head it is like that. Yeah.
And you're obviously you're a lot more liberal on social issues.
Well, let me tell you something. When I first came to this country, I was just like a product of my country. I was more conservative on issues of these issues. Yeah, like the ones I mentioned, like abortion and gay rights, things like that. Those were not, you know, I think I was more on the right side on those, on the conservative side, not the right side, the conservative side. More on the conservative side of those issues. But living here, that's why I like this country because it makes you open to more stuff, and you realize that that everybody should have the same rights that you have. It doesn't matter, and like okay, it's a woman's choice. It's not your opinion. It's what the woman is going through, and she needs to choose what she needs to choose for herself, not what you think is right or even for some religion, reasons or whatever. You know what I mean? So yes, I would say that I was a product of my country when I first came here, but living here so many years, I have, the one thing that I heard once, say about like the gay rights and when Obama said that he has evolved into that, that's when that's when all those laws, or the Supreme Court, ruled in favor of gay rights and stuff like that, and he said that he had evolved, and I felt the same way that I have evolved in those issues, and you can you understand more of what's going on, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's just mind blowing that a whole country or like that all the political entities in a country would be on board with conservative issues. I just find that mind boggling. And do you think that is a product of the Catholic faith? Because I know Catholicism tends to be a little bit more rigid when it comes to stuff like that. So do you think it's like it's because of the Catholic influence in
Definitely, I definitely think that I thought those things based on the Bible or whatever the teachings that I have received.
At this point, my computer completely crashed, and obviously I didn't lose anything, thankfully, but it cut our conversation short. So we had to continue a little bit later over the phone, and I didn't record this, but we just talked a little bit more about the culture in Ecuador, and he elaborated a little bit more on why the society is so conservative, and he said that it has to do a lot with how male dominated Ecuador is, and he said that it's that you can kind of compare it to areas like maybe the Middle East or Asia or East Asia, where it seems that men really are in control. It tends to be a very misogynistic society, and he said that that really factors into their conservative leanings as well as influence from the Catholic Church. But he also mentioned that people are pretty suspicious of the Catholic Church at the same time as really endorsing them and really following them, whether it be enthusiastically or following them in a fundamentalist standpoint. He expressed that they are also kind of suspicious after, the Spanish coming in the 1400s and how religion subjugated the natives. In America, especially in this last election, on the side of the Republicans, it was very clear that God and the Bible played a key role. You couldn't win primary or even the election without having God being almost a center point of your of your entire campaign. I mean, we saw that with Ted Cruz, God bless the great state of Iowa, and he would be praying on stage and everything, and Donald Trump with his 2 Corinthians and everything, that he was clearly trying very hard to appeal to the Christian voters, the Christian constituents, because he knew that if he didn't appeal to them, he wouldn't have won the election. And we can discuss all day whether his when he talks about God and talks about the Bible and his Christian faith and everything, if that's authentic. But he used it, and he used it well, because it worked. He's currently our president. Sergio said that in Ecuador that would not happen. You would not find God being discussed in the campaigns. He said that they just recently had an election, and you would not hear the candidates talking about God at all. So there is this strict separation of church and state, but at the same time, they are extremely conservative. And I don't know if they just don't talk about God because they want the strict separation, or if it is because they don't need to, because that's already well established that their voters are already, for the most part, on the far right side of these social issues. I am sure in Ecuador, though, these issues are hotly debated, but it's probably a smaller minority, unlike in America, where they are centerpieces of elections. A lot of people are single issue voters. I saw this during the last election, and even in my own family, that a lot of people say, listen, I am pro-life. If a candidate supports any form of abortion, I will never vote for them. And usually these single issue voters tend to be taking stances on social issues, whether it be marriage equality, abortion, the death penalty, legalization of marijuana, things like that. I'm just going to read a quick quote by the 39th president of the United States, Jimmy Carter, and he's talking about abortions and the Democratic Party, and I think it's pretty relevant for this episode of the podcast. The quote is as follows: I never have believed that Jesus Christ would approve of abortions. I've signed a public letter calling for the Democratic Party at the next convention to espouse my position on abortion, which is to minimize the need and limit it only to women whose life are in danger or who are pregnant as a result of rape or incest. I think if the Democratic Party would adopt that policy, that would be acceptable to a lot of people who are now estranged from our party because of the abortion issue. Now, you may not be a fan of Jimmy Carter as president of the United States, but he is right. It seems that he recognizes that these social issues deeply divide people on religious grounds. I mean, he talks about how Jesus wouldn't support abortions, and hey, we got to either soften our approach to abortion or even like maybe eliminate it so that we could, appeal to those people. Now, he may be taking a political stance, maybe a political calculation to bring more people over to the Democratic Party, but he recognizes that these issues are incredibly important and they are decided off of people's deep religious convictions. That's going to do it for this episode of the Faith in Humanity podcast. Yes, we changed our name from No Faith in Humanity to the Faith in Humanity podcast. In the next coming weeks, we're going to be releasing a mini-sode explaining why we chose No Faith in Humanity and then why we chose to change it to the Faith in Humanity podcast. So be sure to be on the lookout for that. First of all, thank you all so much for listening. Sam and I both love doing this podcast, whether it be just talking to the guest, our further discussions, our discussions that aren't even recorded on this because it just makes us think a lot about just various different topics, and also just editing it and getting it out there, and hopefully you guys get something from it too. If you could just do us a big favor and just take the time to go and rate us on iTunes or Google or wherever you get your podcasts, that would help us a lot and would help other people to find our podcast. You can find us on Facebook at The Faith in Humanity Podcast. You can also email us. We'd love to hear from you. The email address is tfih.podcast@gmail.com. And until next time, peace be with you.